Welcome to Ride the Wave, hosted by me, Jeff Fisher, and co-hosted by Mark Robinson, in partnership with the Ride the Wave Foundation. Visit us at ridethewave.org, where we're dedicated to empowering their lives through free resources in servant leadership, mental health wellness, and how to find a purpose. At Ride the Wave, we believe in the power of every story, talent, and voice. Our commitment is clear: to bridge divides, unite communities, and build an all-inclusive, modern campus for those experiencing homelessness. So let's dive in and ride the wave of positive change together. Hey everybody, hope all is well. Thank you so much for tuning in and riding the wave. Mark, what's up?
Hello, Jeff.
How you doing, buddy?
Good, you?
Good. Dr. Matt is back once again. What's up, Dr. Matt? How are you?
Hey, Jeff. Doing great. Thank you.
Good. Absolutely. Today, we're going to talk about strength training, fundamentals of movement as well, and mix up a little bit of that 80-20 we've been talking about in previous episodes. So thanks for coming in, and
Absolutely.
I'm going to let you run with it as usual.
Well, cool. Mark and Jeff, thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I figure we'll pick up where we left off using that 80-20 principle, that idea that you can do a lot with a little, essentially, right? And just like with our nutrition, mostly if we cut out the crappy stuff that really causes a lot of inflammation and then make sure we focus on nutrient density, our body's going to do really well. And the same is going to be true for movement. So whenever we talk about working out, strength training, there's all sorts of words people use, right? Going to the gym. And what I really like is to look at when we're talking about getting physically stronger, we should look at that as a skill. Strength is a skill. And that's a principle that I learned that I really think changes the mindset. Just like when I started looking at food as fuel, and that changed my mindset, looking at strength training as a skill, not just a check the box. I went to the gym today. I was there for an hour. I did this many bench press. I did this many that, right? And I did this much weight. Those are good things to keep track of. But the better thing to keep track of is the skill of actually moving that weight. If you do that better with better mind-body connection, that neuromuscular connection, you can actually do that skill better and better and better. And what will naturally happen as a consequence of that is that you get stronger, right? But however you do, if you use a bench press as an example, however much weight you can bench press is secondary to can you perform that strict movement as perfectly as possible, right? With as much neuromuscular engagement as possible, right? Because you have, maybe this is a cool time to talk about it. So there's 3 parts to strength, right? There's how quickly does the muscle fire? Then within the muscle, how many of the muscle fibers contract, and how those muscle fiber contractions are synchronized to create maximal muscle force. So most people think usually it's like, oh, how strong am I is how much can I squeeze something? How much could I lift something up?
Right.
Well, that is subdivided into 3 parts. How quickly can the muscle as a total engage? How synchronized is that engagement process? And then how many of those neurons are actually signaling muscle fibers to engage fully? And so the idea is, even without adding any muscle, if you just increase that neuromuscular control of the muscle, you'll get more strength output, right? Which is where those crazy stories of moms who lift the minivan to save her child when it's on fire, that actually does happen. And you can engage truly 100% of your muscle. But in an extreme example like that, usually it's to the point where you actually rip muscle off of bone. But it's worth it because you save your child. So your brain limits how much you can engage a muscle so that you don't rip it off the bone. So within a normal level of muscular control, that highest end of muscle control that's not going to damage you, right? Because it's not life or death situation, but you still want to be able to engage neuromuscularly maximally. And so everybody can engage more.
Okay.
And so when you look at strength training, you should look at it as that. How well do you do the movement, and how perfectly do you get those muscles to engage and to fire?
Okay. Because if it's not a quality rep, could you be missing or focused on one particular muscle too much and engaging one piece or one portion, going there with a clipboard, just cranking them out, not really focused on the quality of the rep what
Right.
you're doing, that mind-body connection, could you then be weak in the wrong other muscles and over-strengthen something and
Yeah.
be less weak?
Yeah,
Be less strong, I mean.
Right. You're going to use like less than the ideal movement pattern. And then
Yeah, so you're just going in there
a
and
weird
just not-
adaptation.
Yeah.
And then when you do challenge yourself to go as close to your 100% maximum, those bad habits that you built, moving the weight in a sloppy way,
Yeah.
either cause injury or you just not to be able to move the weight when it's truly 100% of your effort is required.
Everybody wants to see the plates.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see the gains and all that, but you make a good point.
Yeah. And I first kind of put this together as a rower. And then when I was at the end of my rowing career, but I was still doing some coaching, I had a lot of time to reflect on how we trained. And so rowing obviously is a sport where you have to move a boat, but a big part of that is how cardiovascularly fit you are. And
It's a tough sport.
coaches, I felt like, actually did too much of the same thing. So they tried to say, we're going to get you more fit by putting you out on the water longer in the boat or putting you on the rowing machine longer in the gym. And I actually don't think that was the best strategy. I think if they wanted to get us as fit as possible and really work on just like pure cardiovascular output, because a big portion of your training would be what was called steady state, where your heart rate's at like 140 and you're just supposed to keep it there for an hour, 2 hours. And that really builds cardiovascular endurance. That would have, in my opinion, have been better achieved doing a huge amount of that running, spin biking, or swimming, because you could push yourself to the point of fatigue where you're getting bad form, but you're still forcing your heart to work hard, which will give you better cardiovascular endurance, even if you have bad form on the spin bike or swimming or running. But because our sport wasn't any of those three things, it didn't matter if you developed bad habits, because you're not out there trying to win a swimming race, you're trying to win a rowing race. So if you develop bad habits, but pushed yourself really to the limit and got great cardiovascular benefit from it, then that would be cool in a sport that didn't matter, right? But then when you went back to the rowing, we should have spent more of our time in the boat trying to execute perfect technique at full race pace, at full race pressure, at things that don't actually correlate over when you're doing that lower, slower heart rate training. And so I felt like coaches tried to maximize the little time they had with athletes and say, oh, well, we'll do rowing and fitness in one thing. And on one level, yeah, you will get more fit if you row, and you do need to spend a certain amount of time in the boat getting the rhythm of all the guys in the crew together and figuring out how to row effectively. But you could also then do some work like that and then get the guys back on land and have them really bust their heart rate with a spin bike or doing other stuff, burpees. You could do a lot of different stuff. And if you develop bad form in those other things, it didn't really matter, because when it came to race day, what you wanted was to have perfect form under maximal exertion. So when you do, and that's one of the things that is characteristic in a rowing race, is that towards the end of a race, many athletes will start to get poor form because they've literally pushed their body to the full limit. But my hypothesis is if you regularly did push yourself to the limit but still had perfect form,
Right.
would, when you get to the end of a rowing race, would you actually maintain good form because you really truly trained the mind-body connection of, even under major stress, how to execute a perfect rowing stroke. Rather than a lot of times on that cardio-based training, the focus wasn't, was it a perfect stroke? It was just, well, we're out here for another 40 minutes on the water. Like, I just need to keep rowing hard, right? But not necessarily well. And
It needs to be beta tested.
yeah,
Should try
it would be
that
really cool. And if a rowing coach is listening to this,
Yeah,
let
if
me
there's a
know
rowing
if you
coach,
institute some of this.
You should let
give me some feedback.
your coach know the one you had prior, or to suggest that, and just to even try something new, to give it a shot, try a different technique, because what you're saying does make sense. If you're maxing it out technique wise each time,
Yeah.
and that's going hand in hand. You know, you don't want to go too overboard every day or anything. I'm sure the max out would be. How often do you think that would be needed, or would that be daily, or maybe once a week max out, the rest fitness, that kind of thing, so you don't go too overboard?
Yeah, I think if you could control the time in the boat to making sure that it was perfect technique,
Yeah.
no matter what the power output was, I think that would be the ideal thing to do. And then if you're just trying to give people, because if you're going to get really fit, you do need to spend a significant amount of time just keeping your heart rate at that aerobic pace and then pegging it there and just going. So you could do that on a spin bike or running or swimming, or you could do so many things like that. But those would probably be your three best. And that, because you can do the same thing on the rowing machine, you could just hold your heart rate. But then you start to think about, the work is the heart rate part, not the actual rowing stroke. So I do think, and this is where it ties into strength training.
Focus on the wrong things.
Yeah, exactly. If we focus on the wrong things, we're going to get outcomes that we didn't mean to get. And my hypothesis with strength training is that you could also focus on the movement as a skill that you want to do perfectly. So for example, we used the bench press earlier, but say it's a kettlebell swing. When you do the kettlebell swing, you do it with 100% intensity. You squeeze every muscle as hard as you can. You squeeze the muscles in your leg. You squeeze the muscles in your feet. You squeeze the muscles in your hand. You squeeze the muscle in the jaw. You squeeze everything so that you're creating the most power output during that kettlebell swing as possible, and also focused on making that as perfect as possible, as symmetrical as possible. You're feeling both glutes engage. You're feeling the kettlebell actually move symmetrically right up the middle. You don't have things that are off center. And the more you focus on the perfect rep, the more you're going to get out of each individual rep you do, and the more you're going to ingrain a pattern of a perfect rep, not a subpar rep that just checked the box of, I did 10, the last 4 of those were crap, right? I would rather you do 6 of them and then put the bell down, recover, and then finish the set with 4 perfect ones again, rather than just say, I said I was going to do 10 in a row, and because I only got to 6, I'm going to figure out how to just do what I said I was going to do.
Right. So you think kettlebells are very effective?
I think kettlebells are super effective.
I've seen that a bunch of times, and I know that UFC, a lot of various people in sports do it. I have a little bit, but I got to implement that into my routine. Even with the personal trainer, we weren't using kettlebells, but that is something that, I should do more of, because I hear the benefits are just great.
I think broadly the benefits of strength training are great.
Yeah.
And then how do you do that? That's up to everybody. I think a kettlebell is a super effective way to do it. I think there's a bunch of benefits, and I'll dive into some of those, but I think strength training is good for you. And however you do that, that's going to have benefits. And if you like to kettlebell swing, then right, use kettlebells. But if you like to do deadlift and back squat and barbell train, then barbell train. Or if you like to use the machines at the gym, use the machines, or whatever it is that you're into, do it, because obviously if you're doing more of it, you're going to do better. Yeah. Right. So, and also like the context of this conversation is in that 80-20 principle. It's not like, how do you get peak athletic performance if you are this peak athlete, right? Because then everybody's going to do something different for whatever the needs of their sport are and how they're applying whatever it is. Right. But I'm talking like the everyman. I'm talking to people like us, right? Like, I've got a son, I've got a wife, I've got a job. How much time do I have to train? Not a ton, right? And I think that's most people, right? Is that your sport is not your job, right? Like, I'd like to be better at Brazilian jiu-jitsu. That's a great thing, but that doesn't have anything to do with my job. And so, whatever progress I'm making in those theaters, you have to be like that 80-20 principle. It's like, how can I do 20% of the work to get 80% of the results so I can be a little stronger when I'm at jiu-jitsu, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think in that regard, whatever you do, you want to be able to do not too much at once, right? And so that's where the strength is a skill. You're getting the most out of every single rep you do. So it's maximizing efficiency, right?
I'm sure it's helping endurance.
It's going to help endurance, yeah.
It will, right? Because your technique is so much better, and you're doing it, and the weight is being increased, and if you're maxing it out also during training at certain times, that seems like an all-encompassing good program.
That's where the breathing comes in at as well.
Oh yeah, Mark makes a good point.
Like
the importance of breathing.
Like your breathing is, in my opinion, is one of the key factors, because like if you want to set a goal to do a certain amount of reps, and then you can't breathe to do those certain amount of reps, but you do less than what you had planned for. Like I think it's like a different result.
That was something, actually, Mark brings up a good point of breathing. I learned that myself. I didn't realize how to properly brace. Breathing in, holding it below, bracing core, bracing glutes, things like that. I realized that all through high school, everything like that was never working out properly. And the breathing, when you're doing that right, the strength, that is really key to getting more reps and to getting a good workout in.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, breath is life, right? That's the Hindu word prana, or the Sanskrit word prana. But yeah, you got to breathe, right? And then you got to brace yourself too. Like that's another principle that I think is really good. So there's 2 books. I didn't actually bring them into the studio today, but we'll show note them. Number 1 is going to be called Kettlebell, Simple and Sinister.
Okay.
It's this this guy, Pavel Tatsulin. He's this cool Russian guy. He brought kettlebells over, at least according to him. His story is that he was the person to introduce kettlebells to the West after the Soviet Union collapsed. And so he's a really like cool guy, and he knows what he's talking about with strength training. And I take a lot of what I'm saying today from him. I think he's a really good resource. And then the other resource that I really like is a physical therapist named Kelly Starrett, and he wrote a book called Becoming a Supple Leopard. And that one, I'm actually going to dive into a little piece of what he teaches in that. I think those 2 books, if we're looking at like what's the 80-20, if you actually want to read 2 books that dramatically increase your ability to take care of yourself from a strength perspective, those would be the 2 books to read.
Okay.
100%. Pavel's book outlines just a really simple philosophy of strength training and how to apply it with a kettlebell. And it's, again, on the affordability side, it's unmatched. Essentially, his program, he asks you to buy 2 kettlebells. Technically, I think really only 1. And then when you upgrade, as you advance in strength, then you'd buy your next kettlebell. But that's one of the cool things about, like, you were asking about the dimensions of how a kettlebell is designed and everything. It's interesting. So for people who haven't seen it, it's a ball, and then it has a handle attached to the top. So the weight is offset from the grip. And because of that, when you swing the kettlebell, it offers movement physics that aren't the same by anything else. And so you don't actually need...
goes with your hand and drags along your palms and engages various muscles that I think if you were just straight lifting with a bar, you wouldn't get, because you would be tightened up in your arms. It makes it more free.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like the swing movement is
very tough
unique.
To explain.
And even just the idea of you can use one kettlebell to do, they're going to be like whole body workouts, right? So there's a couple of pieces that like you can parse out, but a lot of times people think about training as like bodybuilding style training. And again, I think strength training is great. Like however you're going to do it. But if you're looking for like the most efficient, simplest form, I think something like what Pavel lays out in Kettlebell, Simple and Sinister is a really good, simple way to get into it, where you don't need a lot of equipment. Literally, you need 1 kettlebell, and you're going to do 2 movements with it, and then some auxiliary lifts that he teaches in there too. But really, you're doing 2 movements. You're doing this thing called the kettlebell swing, and then you're doing something called the Turkish get-up. And between those 2 things, that is, I think, in my opinion, a great 80-20 program. You could do a lot of other stuff. You could make it more complicated. You could do a lot. But as a baseline, I think if anybody, if you're an any man like us, and you say, I literally have 20 minutes a day that I could schedule into working out. I have 20, 30 minutes I could schedule to working out, and I could do that every day. But I can't get a gym membership. I can't drive somewhere far. I like have to do it in my basement before bed or before work or whenever you're going to figure it out on my lunch break, whatever. That would be your program, and it would make you really, really strong. Make you really strong. And it's a very simple. You just do a little bit every day. Yeah. And
you do bare minimum.
You do the bare minimum.
Just that, and then add stuff if you can.
And if you need to, you can add stuff. But really, it's designed to be pretty complete in what it has. Now, this is not going to make you the world's best X, right? Then you would do a bunch of extra stuff to specialize for that. But you would do this bare minimum to keep your body really strong and to keep your cardiovascular base pretty solid. And that fits into this idea called, the Russians had this idea called general preparation and sport-specific preparation. And so an example of that would be that it's like a pyramid. Most of that pyramid, the base of that pyramid is going to be general preparation, right? No matter what your sport is. You could be a football player, you could be a rower, you could be whatever, right? But like, you need to have a good cardio base, right? You need to be strong. You need to have symmetry of movement. You need to be able to move forward and backwards and laterally and pull your body and push your body, and right? Like there's some base stuff that you need to do. And then there's the stuff that's unique to whatever your special sport is, right? And most people, especially in America, skip over the general part and go right to the sport stuff, right? And I was actually talking to a dad this morning about this, of like, how many kids start playing soccer when they're 3, right? And then they just keep doom, going down the soccer line, right? And soccer is actually a pretty balanced sport, all things considered. You move in a lot of different directions, but a lot of kids are like baseball or something like that, right? And then at some point they even specialize in that sport. Oh, my middle schooler is only playing baseball. He's doing like 3 travel teams and like this is his thing. He's going to the major leagues, right? And then that kid like blows out his elbow in high school, right? And it's like, well, yeah, because we were doing a lot of one thing and very little of other stuff, right? And I think there is great wisdom in this idea that if you spend most of the beginning of your athletic career as like a kid doing a lot of the general stuff, then you'll find once you come into like your full body how to specialize in whatever you really want to specialize in. Now that's maybe not the best advice if you're trying to like literally make your kid the child prodigy of whatever, right? But how many parents make their kid the child prodigy or whatever, and then like one of them turns out right and the rest of them are all jacked up. So if you want to run that risk, you can play that game. But I think generally speaking, most people would do good giving their kid a good baseline of movement, right? And the same for us as adults. And maybe we're an even stronger example of it because we're usually in worse shape than the kids are, right? Like a lot of us are more out of shape, right? More overweight, more weak. And if you just did some basic strength training, you would put your body in a way better position to go run a 5K or to play the backyard football game at Thanksgiving, right? And not blow out your ACL, right? So like, I think you would, if you were just stronger, not any of you, but like the yous of the world, right? If you were stronger, you would be able to do a lot of other things better.
How long do you think it would take to see some results? A couple months maybe? Because people tend to give up when they don't see quick results. Or, I've been doing this a month. I've been doing this a month and a half. I see a little bit, but not where I want to be.
Yeah. You got to set your goals realistically, right? Like,
and diet, I'm sure matters. All that.
No doubt. Nutrition's going to play a huge role.
Yeah.
So what are you after and how are you measuring it? And then is it realistic, the timeline you have for what you're measuring? So you take an average person, they're pretty overweight. They have to lose 20, 30, 40 or more pounds. If we're expecting to be shredded in 3 months, that's silly. That's not realistic. And so it depends like what your definition of success is. And I think that's actually important though. I'm glad you asked that question because a lot of people, like you said, they get frustrated early on and they say, I'm not where I want to be. And it's like, well, you're actually 50 pounds overweight. Like, did you think you could lose that in 3 weeks?
Yeah. Right? Everybody wants fast results.
Yeah. And so I think that you should measure how you look, feel, and perform. I've said that before. Rob Wolf said that, and I've never forgotten it. How do you look, feel, and perform? And those are 3 really good metrics. And so if you're doing this kettlebell program that Pavel lays out with the kettlebell swings and the get-ups, then you're going to feel better. You're going to feel strong, right? You're going to feel better pretty quickly. Probably a couple days in, you're going to be like, I'm stronger, right? I can grip harder. And then how do you perform? You're going to see the actual performance of those exercises get better.
Yeah.
You're going to realize, I'm getting further into the set with more power, with more perfection of my form. And these are becoming easier workouts to do because I'm mastering this weight and I'm able to do it better and better and better. And that's actually the cool thing, again, with the kettlebells. You don't add and subtract weight with kettlebells. They're kind of like a fixed weight and they have big jumps in between how much they weigh. Whereas at the gym, like with a barbell, you can go up by 2.5 pounds on each side. So people are constantly, when you're doing barbell training, always adding a little bit. Add 5 pounds today, add 10 pounds today. And I did that better. Whereas with the kettlebell, the idea is actually that you keep it at a consistent weight for a long time and not until you start to really feel like you did the entire workout, every single rep, absolutely perfect. Then you buy the next jump up in kettlebell, which is usually about 16 pounds because it's measured in kilograms. So you jump up actually like a significant jump. It's not like add 5 pounds. It's like you jump up a pretty significant amount on the kettlebell and then you integrate that into one set out of the total workout. And then you do that for 2 sets and then you do that for 3 sets. And that way you gradually are changing which kettlebell you use to do the workout, right? So you do see progress. But it's also, because it's focused on the skill of it, it gives you a long time to like actually get better at doing the skill before you add more weight to it. You're just trying to do it better and better. It helps your balance. It helps so much.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of the how do you feel part, like in your performance, you would feel better and you would see that you were making a difference, like that you were doing the workout with greater competence.
Yeah, there's nothing better in my life. I don't ever want to go back. to being out of shape. There's nothing better than standing in line to get a cup of coffee or going somewhere with and especially when I'm at 100% chiropractic and, going weekly consistent with that. And when I was going, I'm in between right now. I'm going to probably start in December again. My personal trainer.
I can't wait for you to be back.
Else. Yeah. So I'm in between my personal trainer, really. This guy, Gavin, I really liked him a lot. He was great.
Okay.
And then he's just decided to change careers. So, I'm going to be in December going back to something. But yeah, it really is just, you feel my core feels solid. I'm standing up straight. My confidence is higher. If people don't ever get to that their whole lives, I feel bad for them. And I think that if you do, you'll never want to go back once you're in a position like that.
Yeah.
And even just a couple of weeks of not going to the personal trainer and slacking, I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it, just like my energy, everything. So yeah, it's an important component of my life now. And it really was in the last few years that it's gotten this, bro, especially with everything we're working on. I feel like self-care, Mark, is so important for us too. And just want to optimize my energy, focus, things like that.
I got a question. Is there a standard that or is there, like when you, the kettlebell, is there a standard that you have to start off with just one? Or could you start off with just two and get different results for like a different, so to speak, workout versus using one?
Yeah, you could use multiple.
Okay.
What are you thinking?
Various weights, you mean, on different exercises?
Or doing like two bells at once?
Two at once.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there are some exercises that are like you do them with both. So yeah, you can definitely do that. The program that Pavel lays out, you actually only need one kettlebell at a time. Like you're only gripping it with one hand, or you're doing the swing with both hands on one bell. And there's a variant of it where you're doing each swing with only one arm attached to the bell.
Yeah, shoulders out. There's things you could do with it.
There's a lot you could do. Yeah. I think
things like that.
So the limit is never how much equipment can you have, right? Like obviously, like, if you got the money and the space, like get everything, right? Like you've seen like The Rock's gym and Joe Rogan's gym, and right, like if you can, go all out.
Joe Rogan's big on kettlebells.
Yeah, he is.
He does it all the time.
Yeah, he's talked about it a lot.
And if anybody, I mean, he's in great shape. So at 50 something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying like if you could, like, is there, like, could you start off with two versus starting off with one and get, I guess, either the same results or depending on what type of workout you're doing? Like, could you start off with two versus starting off with one?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And when you figure out your program, you'd want to buy the equipment necessary for the program you wanted to do, right? So if you want to do a bunch of two-handed exercises, then you probably want two kettlebells. Or you could do it with, bodyweight exercises like push-ups and squats and stuff like that. Or you could do it with barbell training, or you could do it with dumbbells, right? And so it doesn't really matter what equipment you use. It matters, do you have a good training program, right? And I think the couple of principles of, especially strength as a skill, that's like the number one principle, that if you apply that, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Like if you're trying to back squat as much as you possibly can, you should be trying to make perfect squats every time you squat, no matter if it's your warm-up weight or your like final set weight, right? And there's a lot of ways you can program strength training. So there are definitely people who are going to have unique specialized programs. Yeah. And again, the more time you put into finding like the perfect program, you should probably already be saying to like everything else I said before this, like already do that, right? But like if you're not doing the basics, then the perfect squat routine isn't what you should be hunting, right? Like you should be hunting, well, how do I work out every day first? And then like figure out, okay, turns out I love to back squat, and I think maybe I could set a world record, or I could set a personal record, right? Or whatever it is. Then, okay, cool. Go deep on the back squat, right? And research it and figure out what are like the most successful training programs in a 12-week cycle for somebody to be able to get the best 1 rep max on a back squat. You could do that, right? Or you could do a more general one of, I want to do these 4 different exercises at a high level. How do I figure out how to do that, right? So like you could figure out any training program you want with any equipment you want. The cool thing about this kettlebell thing is that in terms of like a bar to entry, right? Because I tried to make the same point with eating healthy, is that we're already spending money on food. So you might as well spend that money on better stuff and stop spending it on the crap. And then you already take 3 times a day to eat. So you might as well just use that same pattern in a more productive way. And like, so I tried to make that idea with paleo of there is an affordable way to do it, eggs and ground beef and like the leaner, the cheaper cuts of meat like that. The same thing is true with the kettlebell. It's like for one kettlebell, I don't think there's, other than a pull-up bar, which you did mention earlier, and we'll talk about pull-ups in a second. I don't think there's that much other equipment that like for its cost to how much you can get out of it. Like if you're going to buy a whole set of like dumbbells, you're buying like everything from a 5 to an 80-pound dumbbell. So that's a ton of money and a ton of space to buy all that equipment. When with a kettlebell, you could buy one kettlebell, right? And do pretty much everything that those people could do, or you could buy 2 kettlebells, right? Maybe the same weight. So you could do some symmetrical stuff and be able to do a lot of what all those people with those dumbbells are doing.
And space-wise, you can go outside.
Yeah.
You can go on the lawn, do squats with them. They're just so versatile. So many things you can do.
Yeah.
I was just asking, like, was it like a standard to just start off with one?
Oh,
or
no.
Or could you start off with 2 and, you know, do your workout, whatever? Like,
yeah, definitely.
That's what I was.
And sometimes like in it, like if you can only do the get up with this much weight, but you could do the swing with more weight, then maybe you do need 2 kettlebells to start, right? And you do one exercise with the lighter weight and one exercise with the heavier weight. So that's definitely something you can do. For instance,
I mean, like 2 the same weight.
Yeah. You could do that. Yeah. Yeah, you just couldn't do Turkish get-ups with 2 weights. One hand is meant to have the bell and one hand's not meant to have the bell. But kettlebell swings, yeah, you could do 2 arm swings. So definitely. So yeah, yeah. Okay. What are we at on the clock? Oh, we've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
What was your question?
I just forgot.
Okay, cool.
So you're good.
I'll kind of wrap up at least one of these thoughts is that strength is a skill you can apply to any style of training, right? And then the other piece is the 80-20, is that I think for most people to get nice and strong, to achieve what you want, right? You want to be a dad and you want to be in good shape. You want to be able to take care of your family. You want to be able to play a sport on the weekends and not get hurt. Like you want to just, you know, basic competence. You want to take your shirt off and feel good about it, right? You want to have good lean body mass, like, right? That's your target goal. A really simple thing that I would recommend to everybody is to buy the book Kettlebell Simple and Sinister by Pavel Tsatsouline. And that will give you a really, really simple basic training program that you can get into. If you don't want to do that, then you could find a million other programs that would also be good strength training programs, and doing something consistently will definitely make you strong. And then the third thing that I want to recommend to people is that book, Becoming a Supple Leopard. And the reason I like that is that it's written in 3 parts. The first third of the book is a philosophy of movement that I think everybody should read. And I think broadly, the education we get all through our life, like the school system, does not prepare us to be a healthy person on any level, but especially from like a knowing your body and strength training and movement perspective, like nobody really knows how to move well. Maybe you had good coaches along the way and you played some sports and you got exposed to it, but like the average American, unless like you were blessed to have a good coach or to have like a parent who knew what they were doing in the gym, you probably just have never been taught. Just like on the nutrition front, like people are like, what do you mean? Lucky Charms are bad for me? Like I thought they were good. Like they sell them on TV, right? So most people just don't know what they don't know, right? And so Kelly lays out a really simple philosophy of movement that I'll break down a little bit. Then the second part of the book is how you apply that philosophy of movement. And this, Mark, might be getting to your question, how you apply that philosophy of movement to a bunch of basic strength movements. So like bench press, deadlift, squat, pull up, all different stuff, right? But pretty much any exercise that's going to be like a standard, you go to Gold's Gym and you see people doing it, he pretty much explains how you do that exercise properly, applying his principles of movement. And then the third part of the book that's really cool, and this we'll do on a different day too. We'd give its own episode to recovery. Yeah. He has a whole third of the book all on how do you do your own physical rehab on yourself. And as a physical therapist, he basically writes like, I want you to come to me after you've already done what I put in my book. Like, I don't want you to come to me for me to do something really basic. I want you to be able to do your first aid, so to speak, on yourself And then if you can't, then you come to me and then I'll fix you up beyond that.
Do you have a couple examples?
Different myofascial release stuff,
Using the edge
different
of the
forms
table,
of stretching.
going
Exactly.
back and get like knots out or something.
Exactly. And it's really cool because it's broken up into muscle groups. So it's a whole chart of the body and all the muscles are colored different colors, right? So like shoulders are yellow and biceps and triceps are green or whatever, right? Like, so each muscle group is kind of colored into its own thing. And then it tells you what page to go to for that. So if you're like, oh, my low back, okay, we'll go to the low back section and he'll give you a bunch of stuff for that. Or, oh, if you go, oh, you know, my bicep, okay, then you go in there and you do the bicep stuff. And so that's really cool because it gives you a good baseline of like, how can you take care of yourself? And this is stuff I teach my patients all the time at 100% because we don't do a ton of muscle work with people. Like we do a little bit with it on the table, but I'm always trying to give people a deeper resource where they can do it themselves because it's not complicated stuff. It's everybody could do it in their living room while they watch TV before bed. And, so that recovery piece is really cool in that book, but really the first third of the book. So I think all people should have that because it's kind of like it's like a how to understand yourself book, right? It's like this is what you're working with, and this is how to work with it properly. And so I think that goes a long way for people. And but yeah, so let me break down that principle of movement idea. So, and this really fits well with being a chiropractor too. So I'm always talking about it. The first thing to think about is that your spine in your pelvis is like the center of your body, right? And that's actually true anatomically. You have your axial skeleton, which is the spine, the skull, and part of the pelvis. And then you have your appendicular skeleton, which is your arms and legs and clavicles. And so it's basically you have the center of the body and then the stuff that attaches to it. And then all the muscles are what wrap around that structure. Okay. So if you think about yourself, what you need to be able to do is you need to be able to produce what's called the braced neutral spine. So you keep your body at neutral, right? So roughly ears over shoulders, shoulders over ribs, ribs over hips, right? You should be able to keep that system tight. And then you want to get your movement at the shoulders and the hips, right? And of course, like the rest of the joints beyond those, but really like arms and legs are how we should move. Spine should be nice and stable. Trunk should be nice and stable. And that would be a really good principle for most people to follow in most movements. And then when you do exercises, so this is how I like to tell people to think about how to actually go about working out, is the most basic shape you can make is the plank. And when you think about what a plank is, right, it's the trunk is stable. So it's a braced neutral spine. Mm-hmm. You're not moving the shoulders. You're not moving the hips, right? You're just stationary. Then take a plank and turn it into a push-up, right? A push-up is a plank where you're moving at the shoulders, right? Turn that into a squat. A squat is a plank where you're moving at the hips. And so then you can start to break down these different movements that we do of essentially you want to have a braced neutral spine and then figure out how to move at either the shoulders or the hips or both. Mm-hmm. And that is a really good baseline for how you should make your body in shapes. Like what shape your body should be would be essentially some type of movement of the trunk in relation to the shoulders and the hips. And that right there explains to most people how to do almost everything.
Right. So you don't overextend if you're rotating to the left or moving your back. You know, see, something like that just goes to show how uneducated I am, or me not knowing how the body works, that would need to stay stationary like that. Because, you know, me, I'm twisting it around, probably flying over and not paying attention to technique at all. So having the kind of baseline of how the body works and how it's structured and how we balance is really important. I wonder how many people did not know that.
And I think, like you said, a lot of people get hurt. Now, there are motions that do require rotation, and they require trunk bending or extension. If you think about tackling in football, right? Tackling, you're going to have some extension in the back as you start to come through and tackle. You know, the butterfly stroke in swimming, you're going to have a lot of flexion extension in the spine itself. So there are movements in times that you do need to move you need to not have a braced neutral spine. You need to have a braced moving spine. But when we look at it as like, again, that pyramid of movement, the foundation of your pyramid has to be a lot of movement done with a braced neutral spine.
Okay.
Because that's going to create trunk stability. which then will give you enough strength to be able to move in those other ways without getting hurt. Where do most people get hurt? Most common reason that people hurt their low back, the movement is rotation, not even bending. People think it's bending, but it's usually bending mixed with a rotation.
Okay.
And right, yeah, like, oh, I bent to get
this
thing over here to
left,
my right, right? And then when they pick it up, that's where they jack up their back. Yeah. And that's because that is a complicated movement pattern. And usually those people couldn't do a very good plank.
I just had a thought of how embarrassing it was. I was working at Semco Aerospace. They overhaul crew masks, slides, wraps, things like that for aircrafts. Yeah. And I went in the back. It was all the shop guys too, you know, all the shop guys there. And I went to pick up a piece of paper and I blew out my lower back. It was 10 years ago. I was embarrassed. Everybody made fun of me for it and everything. I was just like, oh, I couldn't even.
Right. And so obviously it wasn't the paper that hurt you.
It was the way I went to go down and just pick it up. I was to the side a little bit. My feet were to the left. I was not squatting, using my leg or anything like that. It was nothing heavy. Yeah. I didn't even feel like it was sore prior. It was just the way I went down. It was just, you made me think of that and how embarrassing that was.
It's like using the kettlebell. Like say we sitting in the chair now and you have like one kettlebell and you go to, you know, lift it up. Do you lean and pick it up or do you sit up and just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that will all be probably explained right in the programs themselves or the posture.
Yeah, it depends like what movement you're doing.
Like you get it, like you want to. I don't know if I'm like saying it right.
You don't want to lift with your back. You want to lift with your legs.
You know how you drop something, you go to lean over to pick it up, versus kettlebell, whereas you drop it, it's gonna land with the handle up. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Most times. Yeah. So, like, do you lean and pick the kettle up? Probably. Or do you, being that the handle is already there, you could just reach down and just,
So if you're trying to train the braced neutral spine, you'd want to address it with a braced neutral spine. If you were trying to train more of like the ability to have a braced spine with different movements in it, then there's definitely, there's stuff where you laterally side bend, pick it up, and bend back. But again, like the kettlebell is going to teach you to respect it. If it's heavy for you to pick it up with a braced neutral spine, you stand up and you basically deadlift it, right? You have it between your feet, you grab the horns of the bell, and then you pick it up. That you're probably not going to pick that up from like a side bending position if it's hard to do it with two hands lined up neutrally. But if it's a lightweight, if it's a 15 or 20 pound kettlebell, right, and you're picking up a 60 pound kettlebell, usually with both hands, right, deadlift style, then yeah, maybe you do some side bends with a lighter kettlebell. So yeah, I would say as long as there's no reason not to move with a braced neutral spine, but the majority of athletic motion should be a braced neutral spine. And you should be really competent at that. That's a skill, right? It's not just a thing. It's like, again, it goes back to strength as a skill. What's the skill you have of bracing your core? Because that's what you need if you're going to get in a car accident. That's what you need if you're skiing and you start to fall. That's what you need if you're 85 years old and you start to slip on the stairs. You need to brace your core because you can't extend your leg properly if your core is not braced. You can't grab the railing if your leg isn't properly braced, or rather your trunk isn't properly braced. So wherever you are in life, whether it's you're chasing after your kid at a playground or you're trying to lift weights or you're just out having fun or whatever's going on, you should be physically strong. Like we should be strong and capable of bracing our body and then moving athletically on top of that. Yeah.
Is there any benefit to the bone structure, density as well when lifting like that?
Yeah, the more you lift weights, the denser your bones get.
The denser your bones are, naturally.
Yeah, there's something called Wolff's Law.
I heard of that.
Yeah, so Wolff, like the animal, Wolff's Law, the direction that force is applied to something, the bone is going to strengthen in the direction that it's applied. Okay. So if you're lifting lots of weights, the bones are going to get denser. They're going to get thicker. The tendons are going to get bigger and thicker. The point that the bone and the tendon become one, that gets stronger and more robust. So yeah, your body gets adapted to what you're doing. Yeah. Right. And that's part of what, when people look at people who are fit, one of the things they see is that they have bigger muscles. Right. Right. And they have less fat, right? Those are the two pieces to looking jacked, right? Is big muscles, less fat, right? But even, I would say like for the human body, and again, this was kind of like your question about goals. if you look at a magazine cover, a lot of times that's not a realistic picture of a human.
Right.
And this is a big part in the paleo diet too, is that your genes want every single human on the planet. There's no such thing as a human who doesn't have this genotype. Like all humans, their DNA wants them to be lean and strong. That's what everybody's DNA wants. And most people are fat.
Right.
Just very simply put, right?
Yeah,
Most people
issue.
are too fat. And whether it's 5 pounds too fat or 100 pounds too fat, most people are somewhere on the too fat side.
Right.
And most people would look way better naked if they were leaner, right? And it doesn't mean that they need to be like Ronnie Coleman steroid jacked, like huge
everybody
crazy
does
muscles.
have different tastes.
So and you could get like
Just
that if
saying,
you want
there,
to.
There are some guys that are like bigger women. I'm just saying.
So you could definitely get super jacked if you want, right? And of course, if you like big girls, go for it. But the
And then, hey, they need love too.
everybody
Same,
needs
Mark.
love, right? But I would also argue that those women who are overweight would be healthier and live longer lives
Right.
and
At
raise
the end of the
healthier
day,
children
when it
if they
comes
were
down
lean.
to
So I think everybody
overall
should be lean, right? Like because it's a health thing, right? So there is what is our genetic default is to be actually healthy, is to be lean, physically capable, strong. But that doesn't mean that we're winning powerlifting competitions. That doesn't mean that we're winning bodybuilding competitions. So again, that goes more towards that specific preparation versus the general preparation.
Yeah.
So when you talk about doing a basic strength training program 6 or 7 days a week with kettlebells and you're doing a little bit every day, that is going to get you strong and lean. And if you do that day after day, year after year, you're going to be in a very different place, no matter how overweight somebody is, right? They are going to get physically stronger and more lean. And there's a bunch of benefits that come of that. You burn more energy, just having more muscle. Lean body mass increases basal metabolic rate. So people will naturally start to have a body composition change
So
as
you're
they get stronger.
basically creating a
Depending on their
foundation.
determination.
What's that?
As I was saying, depending on their determination
Yeah.
Yeah.
and their will to want to reach a certain goal and actually really stick to it, and things like that.
Yeah. Motivation.
No doubt.
Stuff. Motivation. Just keeping. I know I always avoid core workouts. I hate working
So
out
I
core.
would argue that there's no such thing as a core workout. Like I think this is where a lot of people, and again, this is like part of that 80-20 idea, is that there's a lot of complicated ideas around exercise that I don't like. Like exercise as a phrase, I think is a bad term.
Really?
That's why I like training. Right? Like you're doing a skill. You're not just checking the box. I went to the gym for 1 hour and I put my heart rate at X, right? That's working out. That's making myself sweat. And that gets boring to people. I have to do 60 sit-ups before I go home today.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why do you have to do 60 sit-ups today? Is that the only way you activate your core? Is that even a very realistic way to activate your core? Not really. Like we don't do sit-ups very much. It's kind of like a goofy position to do anyway.
Yeah.
And you're better off, like, what did we say before? Brace neutral spine.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you can figure out how to brace your core and then do physical movements, you're going to do your abs.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think the same thing. People think, oh, I have to do bicep curls so I can have bigger arms. All of those I think they work. And I'm not saying don't do them. Like if the option is I'm never going to work out or I'm going to do a classic bodybuilding style workout, right? Somewhere between 10 and 15 reps per set. And I'm going to do hypertrophy style workouts and we're going to do a bunch of different muscle groups and we're going to train back and buys one day. And right. And you can do that style of lifting and it will get you stronger, but it's not the most efficient. Right. And so this whole idea of, I need to do core or I need to do arms or I need to do, if you work your body, everything gets stronger together. Right. And that's again, getting back to that blueprint. Like our DNA is the blueprint inside our body, right? Our body will build what the blueprint says as long as we follow the rules, right? So eating a paleo diet is following the rules. Giving your body physical, strenuous work to do is following the rules, right? Our ancestors didn't work out. They didn't have a gym. Like what gym did they have, right? But their life was a workout, right? They had to walk places. They had to carry stuff. They had to climb stuff. They had to lift stuff. They had to drag stuff, right? They had to do stuff with their body. And when we go work out, that's why I also like kettlebells, is that you're not there just doing bicep curls, right? You're doing big full body movements. Right. It might help. Like, do you guys know what a Turkish get up is?
No.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll link to one that Pavel teaches. And That way people watching can see it, and you guys too. But basically you lay on the ground, you put a kettlebell up, and then you stand up, and then you lay back down. And so it's kind of interesting. It's like, it's not an explosive movement. It's a static movement. So you're squeezing all your muscles, but it's very hard to do. And it's very good for your overall body. And so you don't have to do very many reps. Basically the program that Pavel has you do is you do 10 get-ups and then you do 100 swings. And you just do that 6 days a week. And that's it. And so as like a minimum effective dose, you're doing 120 reps.
If it's full body, how are you getting your legs? Oh, the squats.
So
the squats you're taking the kettlebell underneath and then going up. So you're getting, you are squatting and getting legs too.
If you're laying down, you have one kettle bar, like you, I guess, get up with like both hands on the one kettlebell. You get up, and squat down.
Probably not what you're picturing. I'll show you guys.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not, like I said, I think I've seen something similar to that. But
yeah, it's not on the ground, but I know what you're saying. We'll actually take a look at it after too, because I'm interested in.
But the broader point is, absolutely. But the broader point is, you don't have to do a Turkish get up and a kettlebell swing. That doesn't have to be your strength training program, right? But those are two movements that work most of the body and are pretty simple to do. And again, it's that minimum effective dose, right?
Do you think it's the best way to maintain a foundation to then specialize in other things and then branch off that to other types of training? Utilizing that program as sort of like a,
I think it's a really good foundational program that's really simple and that is already written in a book that people can easily buy the book and read the book and do the program. And like, so I think in terms of like, if we're giving our audience something to go take and do, then I think that's a really easy one, right? Because it's already all packaged up together. But there's, in terms of the best, no, it's not the best. Like I don't know what is the best though, right? Like that would be such a crazy thing to try to analyze.
Not best, but
it's a simple,
easy
recommended. I recommend
from you because of the movements that could create a bit of a foundation there. I mean, absolutely, everybody's different too.
I think
everybody is into different things and would want different workouts. But I mean, as a core, for somebody that doesn't know anything, that is looking to just start out, to maybe just look under the hood and try. It's a good first step for that.
Buy Kettlebell, simple and sinister. Do the program.
All right.
Give it 3 months. Do it. Yeah, cool. We'll check in on you, Jeff.
Mark too. We got to do it as well. This is a challenge right now. We're gonna do the kettlebell towns. You down?
Yeah.
All right. We'll do it.
Cool. I'm in. I'll do it with you guys.
I have a question for you.
Fire away.
Are you gonna write up a program? Write a book? When am I gonna be able to follow your program?
All right. I like that. Challenge accepted. Yeah, I've been putting something together in the background.
Yeah, because you know what you're saying, Dr. Matt, like, I think that you have a lot to bring to the table. I think that you have a unique way of looking at things and a lot of knowledge. You know, clearly you're somebody that has read a lot, put some time into self-development and also your physical aspects and just overall, you're a smart guy. And I think that the things you're saying make sense. And you might have something there. So definitely encourage you, or if there's anything we can do, utilize our platform. If you do end up doing that, not to put pressure on you, anything. But I don't know. I feel like there's something there, what you're talking about though. Yeah. That's not out there now. That if you did put it together, put your thoughts together there, either in a book or in creating your own program, that it would be nice. It would be a good one.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So the working title is the user manual. And just like, you get instructions with anything you buy, right? And it teaches you how to use it. Yeah. It's kind of funny that we have this amazing piece of technology, our body, right? And we don't have any idea how to use it, right? And so I think putting together that, definitely nutrition is a big piece of what I've been working on, and movement is a big piece of what I've been working on. So
because a lot of what I think is missing from those programs, like if I get back in the day, something with a DVD or online digitally, and you go in their video and stuff like that, is that explanation of, they could put up some graphics and they could explain the body a little bit more. Or when the exercise is happening, explain to the people what's happening within the body, the movements, how the muscles are engaging, how to avoid particular injuries, things like that. I think you could mold some education into a program too a little bit. It's not something that I see often because I'm always interested in that kind of stuff. If I go to the eye doctor, it's very fascinating when the doctor goes the extra mile and explains the details of everything. That's why I like 100% chiropractic so much. How you explained and went above and beyond an average office. things like that, just about the body is really, really fascinating and interesting. They should do that now more often.
Cool. I'll take that. Thanks, man.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think if you can give my biggest concept is that I think we said this in the first episode, like the Knights of the Round Table idea, right? Like you should be King Arthur, but you should have a bunch of good advisors. And so, yeah, I definitely believe in the individual making good decisions if they're well educated. And so that's the mission of what I've been doing, is educating people on taking control of their health.
Yeah, absolutely. And movement, strength, I mean, those are all very important.
They're necessary ingredients. And they're things that really you can only do for yourself. Yeah. Like I can't feed you, right? You're not my son, right? Like I can't work you out. But I can do those things for me, right? And you do those things for you. And I love being a chiropractor because I feel like that's the cherry on top, is that if you eat well and you move well and you sleep well, then your body is getting the nutrients it needs. Mm-hmm. And then as long as that person is well adjusted and their nervous system is clear, then their brain and their body are going to work together properly. And then they're going to make the most out of what they've eaten and how they've worked out and how they're recovering. And so, I believe humans are meant to thrive.
Keep the good fight going, Dr. Matt. You're the man. You're really informative. Appreciate you coming on and educating everybody out there. Is there anything else that you want to leave it off with the strength, or, you had mentioned recovery.
Yeah,
I know we talked about
more
that
on recovery.
So
I think we'll also do a future one on more the cardio endurance side of things too.
Endurance. Yeah. Makes sense.
So we'll work on that. And if you guys have questions or anything, please put them in the comments, because we can address those too. Like that would be cool to do like a Q&A one, where at whatever point it makes sense. But if we get some feedback from the audience asking questions about what we talked about, then I can make sure I really address that. Yeah,
absolutely. Also info@ridethewave.org. You could always email us. I don't know if you want to give up your website or any information on your end.
Yeah. Check it out. It's drmattmcneil.com.
All right. Yeah, excellent. This was another great one. Thank you so much, Dr. Matt, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Mark, you got anything?
As always, thank you. Appreciate you always coming.
Absolutely.
Glad to have you as always.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you,
always
Jeff.
Learning something new.
Good stuff. You take care. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you. Have a great day or night. Take care.
Till next time.
Thank you for tuning in to Ride the Wave. It's been a pleasure having you with us as we explore ways to make a positive impact together. Remember, every little wave creates a ripple of change. We appreciate any support you can provide as we plan to build an all-inclusive, modern campus and empower communities. For details on how you can contribute through various platforms, please visit us at ridethewave.org. Until next time, keep riding the wave of change with us. I'm Jeff Fisher, signing off, but the journey continues.